I'm Glenda Probst, and I'm here today with Becky Kavanaugh. And today we're going to be doing the forgiveness workshop, or as we like to call it, the F word. So I'm going to tell you who I am, if you don't already know. And then Becky's going to introduce herself, and then we're going to get started with this, okay? I'm Glenda Probst, and I am the founder of Nanny Transitions. I'm the founder of the Nanny Transitions Workshop. And together, Becky and Kavanaugh and I have started the rebuilding team. And the reason that we started the rebuilding team is because as we worked with nannies in transition, what we realized is that there are a lot of nannies out there that are falling through the cracks, that maybe they're not nannies who can afford to go to the INA conferences, or they can't afford to go to the Nanny Palooza conferences, but they're out there and they're working and they're going through transitions and they're struggling and they don't have great resources because they don't have tons of money available. And so Becky and I decided that we were going to start this workshop. And so it's all about rebuilding your career, rebuilding yourself, rebuilding your self-esteem. And so we're going to be doing all these different workshops on all these different topics. And I'm so excited. I'm happy that you're here. If this is your first time joining us, we welcome you. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let Becky do her introduction and we'll get on with our program today.
Thanks, Glenda. So excited to do this as a live. And we thought we need to get it into our regular. So that's cool. So that's why we're doing this again. So that you saw it live. And I honestly tell you, you will not hear the same things come out of our mouths on the live and today. There'll be something fresh and new. That's how we roll. Glenda and I have come from a long service in the nanny industry, both as nannies, but also serving in other leadership roles. And so it's kind of in our blood to try to share more, do more. We never charge for anything that we're doing. We believe strongly that's important. It's free for you. We also have a handout. I'm going to say it now at the beginning, and I'm going to say at the end. We have a handout and a certificate if you want it, certificate of completion if you want it. But you do need to email us. And here's the email address so that you can email us and let us know what you're looking for. Also, great place to provide, if you have questions and you want to talk with us privately, that's a good place to give something to us, as well as a Facebook rebuilding page. We have our own page on Facebook that's just about rebuilding, and we will be posting things on there from time to time, but it's also a place to reach out to us. So do look for that. So let's dig in. Let's dig into this F word, forgiveness. This is something that touches us in our work life and out of our work life. And so some of the tips and things that we're going to talk about are going to be good all the time. I mean, in your whole life. So buckle up, buttercup. Here we go. To give some structure, we feel like we should start with defining what forgiveness is. And so psychologists generally define forgiveness as a conscious and deliberate decision, your conscious and deliberate decision, to release feelings of resentment or vengeance toward a person or a group that has harmed you, regardless of whether they actually deserve your forgiveness. It does not mean forgetting. You know that forgive and forget. I'm sorry, they don't go together. Forgiveness is that conscious decision. Forgetting might happen over a long period of time that you just let it slide out and you can't remember. But often it's still there. You're not required to forget, to forgive. And you don't condone or excuse someone else's behavior in forgiveness either. Sometimes forgiveness includes rebuilding relationships, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes forgiveness is linked to having to keep those people who hurt or harm you in your life for various reasons, and we'll talk about some of those. But it might be letting them go for your own health and for the healing of everybody. So it has both ends of that. So we have broken it down into these 3 types of forgiveness. And I took this from Dr. Stefan Manier from the UCLA Medical School. He had written this article, and it was so good in defining these 3 different types of forgiveness. And I'm like, I can see myself in that, and I can see how that works. So the 3 of them are exoneration, forbearance, and release. So let's start with exoneration. Exoneration is wiping the slate clean. There are usually little things that come up day to day in our lives. This is something we do really well with children. We teach them, oh, that was a mistake. We're all sorry for it. We worked it out. This is the process, and we guide them through it really well. We may even do it very well ourselves, because exoneration is basically starting a new day. When the kids that I took care of for many, many years were really little, we would just call for a new day. A new day could happen at lunchtime. A new day can happen anytime. Like, I've had a terrible 2 hours. I'd like to start fresh. Yes, let's all start fresh. And it was just a way to just get it out, move on, because little squabbles and things happen all the time. But we understand how exoneration works. It's not a big deal. We move on, we forgive, and we carry on. But then there's the thing called forbearance. And I think where some of us might have to live in this place of forbearance. So something's happened, then you can't the offender, the person who hurt your feelings, who did the wrong thing, doesn't totally apologize, or you don't get the apology you expected, or the apology comes with, well, if you didn't do XYZ, then I wouldn't have said that, or I wouldn't have done that. Which is another piece of the puzzle, is looking at yourself. But just let's talk about what this means. So this apology is offered. It's not what you hope for. Maybe it's not authentic. And while you should always reflect on whether you had some part in it, you can't really bear the responsibility. So you decide whether that relationship really matters. And can you forbear? Can you put up with what is going on and just say, okay, moving on? It's interesting that can happen with your employer. Some little thing happens and it's challenging, and they're not apologizing. Maybe they don't even recognize what they've done, but you need to keep working with them, and it's worth it to you to keep working with them. So you find a way. But also, I think that you find a way to go, now I've learned a lesson about whatever the situation was. I'm going to change maybe my behavior going forward. Maybe you don't dwell on the situation or anything, but you also are being very watchful. So the relationship has shifted, but not completely been erased, so to speak. And then the last one of those is a release. It doesn't exonerate the offender, nor does it require you to forbear anything. It doesn't even demand of you that you continue the relationship, but it asks you instead to define your life by the terms of those hurt things, that you just release those bad feelings. We all have had this happen to us. Maybe it happened to you yesterday. Maybe it happened to you last week. Maybe it happened to you years ago. But at some point you just say, it's not worth the effort, the energy, and the pain that's continuing to happen to keep this in me. I need to just let this go and just release it. You're not releasing the pain or anger and moving past the dwelling of old hurts or betrayals. You're allowing the ones that hurt you to continually hurt you because you're holding it. So it's just like saying, I don't want you to have any more power over me, and that's it. And typically that relationship then comes to a conclusion of some kind. They're no longer in your life. So those are the three main things we can think about as we're moving forward and talking about tips and why it's important to forgive. And I know Glenda has some wonderful things to tell us about that.
I love the way that you defined forgiveness and you went through all those things, because I think it sets the scene for all of these things. And for people to understand how many different kinds of forgiveness there are. There's not just the forgive and forget kind, you know? And so I do want to talk about why it's important to forgive. And it's also important to learn how to accept forgiveness. You know, I mean, maybe somebody forgives you, but you don't forgive them. Because, you know, forgiveness is a choice. It isn't something that you just get up and you go, okay, well, yeah, I'm going to forgive him today. You know, it just doesn't happen that easily. When someone hurts you or they wrong you, it takes time for you to process those feelings and release that hurt or that anger and to begin to move on. And a lot of times what happens is that as we process those emotions and those things that happen and we play them over and over again in our mind, we don't release it and we don't move through it. We just become angrier about it. And we hold on to it. And, you know, holding on to anger, it's not healthy. It doesn't serve us. It doesn't help us. And it doesn't serve us in the long run. It doesn't help us to move forward. It doesn't help us to grow or learn or change. Because when we hold on to something negative, it continues to hurt us. It's like a rock in your shoe. And every step you take, you go, oh, that hurt. Well, yeah, that hurt. I should probably get that rock out of my shoe. No, I'm going to leave it. I'm just not going to deal with it right now. And when you have to forgive someone, it has to be a conscious decision and it has to be a choice on your part. It isn't something that you're just going to work up one day and it's going to be done. Because it's hard to forgive. And so let's talk about the reasons why it's hard to forgive. It's hard to forgive because usually when someone hurts you, it's unexpected. You can't believe that they did it. You're angry that they did it. You're sad that they did it. And you just can't believe that they did it. So in reality, when someone hurts you, being able to forgive them is very much like the stages of grief. You know, first you're in denial. Then you're angry. Then you begin to process it. Sometimes you close yourself off. Sometimes you get mad at yourself. Maybe you say, oh, that was so stupid of me. I can't believe I did that. Or maybe you feel out of control. Maybe you feel out of control of your emotions. Or maybe you harden your heart and you say, well, I'm never going to make that mistake again. I'm never going to let anybody do that to me. I want to tell you something about what happens when you harden your heart. I think that when we harden our hearts, we think that we're protecting ourselves. But the reality is that when you harden your heart, you don't make yourself stronger. In fact, none of those things make you stronger. The only thing that can make you stronger is to understand what happened to you, process it, think about it. Think about it from all different angles and make a choice to put it down and make a choice to let it go. Because if you don't let go of it, you're going to carry it with you everywhere you go. And not only are you going to carry it with you, but eventually it's going to be a part of you. It's going to change the way you think. It's going to change the way you feel. It's going to change the way you interact with people. And it's going to become a heavy burden to bear. And the other thing that can happen when you can't let go of anger and you can't forgive is that it becomes your story. And then it's like, oh, let me tell you what happened to me. Let me tell you what somebody did to me. Let me tell you how somebody hurt me. Can you believe that? Can you believe that somebody did that to me? And you just start to let it define your life. And and when you do something like that, it's like you carry this heavy, ugly thing with you all the time. And you just whip it out anytime you feel like, you need to, or you're angry, or somebody makes you mad, or you find somebody to listen. And it hurts you so much. It just festers inside of you. And you become obsessed with how you were wrong and you can't think about anything else. And sometimes it can even escalate into revenge. I'm going to get back at them. I'm just going to tell everybody how horrible they are. I'm just going to tell all my nanny friends not to work for that family. I'm just going to tell them they were horrible people. And revenge doesn't serve you either, because revenge is another thing that's not healthy. The healthiest revenge is to live well. When someone does something to us, we have to be willing to accept our part in the story. We have to be able to do that. We have to be able to look at this situation and determine what our part in that story was. Maybe we were naive. Maybe we didn't know better. Maybe they lied to us. Maybe we were tricked. Maybe we were blindsided. But when you start to move through forgiveness, you have to accept what your part was, regardless of what it is. And, I'll tell you that when I went through my really hard transition with my family, the first family, when my job ended, I stayed too long. And I'll tell you that. I stayed too long. And I stayed past the point of being challenged. I stayed past the magic. And, we talked about that in the burnout class. When the magic goes, it's gone. And you have to own your part. I did all the wrong things. I will tell you that I did all the wrong things. And when I look back on that, I had to learn that lesson. I had to take responsibility for the mistakes I made. And I had to learn that lesson. And in nanny transitions, we teach you very specific things to do when you realize that, your job's not working out. We actually teach you things to do from the very beginning about having a plan and having a backup plan. And so maybe sometimes when you have to own your part, what you have to own is the fact that you saw the signs and you ignored them. Or maybe when your employers told you they were keeping you forever, you believed them. Because, they probably meant it when they said it. And it doesn't make them bad people. And it doesn't make you stupid. And it just means that you have to realize that there are lessons to be learned. And so if you can step outside of yourself and forgive yourself first, and that's the first person that you have to forgive when you make a mistake, is to forgive yourself. Own your part and forgive yourself for it. And Becky, you're going to talk a little bit about how forgiveness relates to your nanny career. And as you talk about that, if there's anything you want to add from this part, you feel free to do that.
Well, a lot of it overlaps for sure, because they're kind of the same thing. And you know what? It doesn't hurt to repeat ourselves, does it? Sometimes that's what we need. We got to hear it again, let it soak in. Because I'm going to start with forgiving your past mistakes. Maybe you chose the wrong family and you had a hard time, and now you know something. Have you learned the lesson? We just talked about that. Forgive yourself about it. Don't beat yourself up over and over and over again. The next thing is about making decisions. Maybe you did something on the job that you probably now know I should never have done that. It just became a problem, and it just kind of blew up in my face, or the job ended in a very sour note because of maybe actions I took or actions or reactions that happened throughout that process. You have to be able just to look at it and say, yep, there it is. That's the lesson. Face it. Because if you kind of pretend it didn't happen or it wasn't my fault in any way, I wasn't the one that did it, then you are doomed to repeat yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's just a truth. So you have to be able to look at yourself. And Glenda said that, but you really need to look at it as your job and your career. You cannot move forward. You cannot get that next job or the better job or try something fresh if you haven't looked and really faced it. And just say, yep, I'm going to own that. That's me. I did that. I've learned now. And I'm going to forgive myself about that, because being upset about it or festering in it, fester, rot, is totally unhelpful and totally unhealthful. It's just poor for you. We need to forgive ourselves when we just make little mistakes as we go along. You can't keep telling yourself, oh gosh, I'm so dumb about that. That self-talk is unforgiveness about things. It's like, wow, now get a grip on yourself. You have to be able to forgive yourself. That was a mistake. I know better now. I will do better. Don't wallow in those mistakes, especially when we started out. Remember when we first started out as nannies? There was a lot of navigating and a lot of mistakes being made. And I hope that you took the opportunity to learn out of those. And I hope you're not going back and beating yourself up about something that happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago, heaven forbid, 20 years ago. I mean, we're different people. We've moved forward, I hope. But sometimes there are people who just continually regurgitate that stuff and harm themselves, and therefore they're damaging what's happening around them. And when, if you think about that, you would never do anything that would hurt the children that we care for. And we would help them resolve these things. We don't do a very good job of that on ourselves. So let's take a moment to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Look at that. And being able to forgive a past employer, they may not even, if you haven't communicated to them that there was a hurtful situation, that you need to look at. But also, they may not know that they did anything that was hurtful. And if you can't resolve it, it's in the past, then you need to release it and let it go and forgive them. And maybe it's a current employer who's done something and you're struggling with it. Look at what it is that you did that caused any kind of issue, deal with that within yourself, and then maybe you just forbear. If you want to keep that relationship going, then you need to find a way through. You have to let go of the past and move forward. I mean, Glenda has said this to us so many times over all kinds of videos, nanny transitions based on so much of that. You cannot move forward if you're constantly reliving the past. And I just always say that was then, and this is now. You cannot enjoy the present moment and be present for children in your care if you are constantly in the back of your mind fighting some sort of disease process of unforgiveness that's just causing trauma. You're just dragging it behind you everywhere you go. I mean, people, do you know some people, you can see what they're dragging behind you and you're like, oh my gosh, you got to get rid of some of that stuff. You'll see them sometimes post in multiple groups the same story over and over and over. And I'm like, you need to work through it and you need to release it. That was then, and this is now. We all have ups and downs in our careers. It's like, and in our lives, it's like riding a roller coaster. Sometimes that ride is really scary. Sometimes you can just ride out those bumps and come out on the other side doing really well. And sometimes you have to step away and say that I can't deal with anymore. We got to move on. We have to release things. But it takes practice. It takes practice. And Glenda's going to talk about the practice.
And the practice part of it is you have to practice empathy. And if you don't understand what that means, emotion researchers generally define empathy as the ability to sense other people's emotions, coupled with the ability to imagine what someone else might be thinking or feeling. You know, nannies are often highly empathetic, and it allows them to be in touch emotionally and cognitively with the children in their care. But one of the things that we frequently forget to do, which can really improve your relationships with your employers, is to empathize with your employer, to empathize with what they're going through. Step back and put yourself in their shoes. Do they have you? Yes. Are you an amazing nanny? Yes. But, our jobs are so different than a parent who is an attorney, or a parent who's out there trying to run her own business, who has 10 people underneath her, and she's just lost a big account and she's trying to figure out how she's going to make payroll for the week. A parent who's in a corporate position who is, their boss is coming down on them because sales are down and somebody has to take the heat, and they're the one that gets to take the heat. And then the kids are sick and the kids are up all night and they're crying all night, and they get up in the morning and, they have to go to work, and then they get in a fight with their wife, or, whatever. I mean, when we don't live in, especially when we don't live in, we never know what's happened before we walk in the door in the morning. That's one of the things about working in daycare and flipping to working as a nanny that I realized was that, when I worked in daycare, I always saw what happened with the children after they got to school. But when I was working as a nanny, I always saw what happened in the family before the children went off to preschool. And it's a great insight, nannies just sometimes have high expectations of their employers, and they don't really consider their employers perfect, but at the same time, they expect them to be perfect to them, to always be on time, to always show up, to always communicate, to always remember to put the do the paycheck, to always remember the 5 other million things that, they have to do. And I think that it's sometimes, if we could just step back and look at their life. Yes, we do make their life easier. It's part of what we do to make their life easier. But it's hard to be a parent. If you've never been a parent, or if you're a nanny who's been a parent, I mean, you probably understand it. But we really have to try and see things from their position. And one of the things I always like to remind nannies of is that, when your employer hired you, they didn't hire you with the thought that, hey, I'm going to hire this person, I'm going to let her fall in love with my kids, and then in 5 years, I'm just going to cut her off at the knees and kick her to the curb. Because that's not the intention. But life happens. And it isn't just that children grow up, it's life changes. And when your employer told you they wanted to keep you forever, they probably really did. And they probably really, really meant that. Probably meant it from the bottom of their heart. Probably one of the nicest, most loving things an employer, not loving, but one of the nicest compliments an employer could give you is to say, we want to keep you forever. And they probably do mean it when they say it. It's just not reality. And the other part of it is, that as nannies, as professionals, it's our job to be responsible for ourselves. It isn't our employer's job to plan for our future. It is our employer's job to give us a paycheck and to pay us a living wage. But it is not their job to make sure that we have job security for the next 10, 15, 20 years. It's our job. And the way that we do that is we stay abreast of what's going on in the industry. We go to conferences. We attend live workshops like this one. We continue to grow as professionals and educate ourselves and make ourselves marketable and make ourselves worth hiring and worth keeping. Okay. And that's on us. That's on us. And if our employers promise to keep us forever, and then they come back 5 years later and they say, we're sorry, we just can't keep you. And then the next thing you know, they're buying a new car or they're putting an addition on their house. Really? It's none of your business. They work hard, they're raising a family, they're doing what they need to do to take care of themselves. And as long as they're paying you your paycheck, or as long as they're being responsible parents, it's really none of our business what they do with their money. And if they decide that they would rather put their kids in daycare and put an addition on their house or buy a new car, it's hard and it hurts. We don't have any say-so about what they do with their money once that decision's been made. We have to be responsible for ourselves. And I think that so many times we fall into this trap of thinking, oh, they're going to take care of me, and it really changes us. It changes our perspective and it changes kind of our attitude. And so we really have to put ourselves in our employer's shoes. We have to think about all the hats they wear and all the responsibilities that they have that changes us and changes things in their life. And sometimes that affects us. And that's where empathy comes in. We have to see things from their perspective, or at least understand that they have the right to change their mind. It helps us to support them better. It helps us to see things in a different light. And as time goes on, it helps us to forgive them for not always being able to keep their promises. It helps to give them grace. It helps us to give them grace. It helps us to forgive them while we retain our boundaries. It doesn't mean that we have to forgive them for not giving us a raise. I mean, we do eventually we need to do that. But it's different when you have to get through that kind of forgiveness, that they didn't do what they promised they were going to do, or that they took advantage of you, or that they never came home from work on time. Those are different kinds of forgiveness than these things are, And I mean, Becky touched on it in her last section, but when there are unresolved issues between you and your employer, it's as much on you as it is on them. If your employer is doing something that you don't like, or you don't feel good about, or you don't feel is your job, or you don't feel it's your responsibility, or you feel taken advantage of, you need to say something. Because as long as you remain quiet, they're just going to assume that it's okay with you. And the other part of that is you are teaching your employer that it's okay with you. So you have to talk about these things before they become these issues, And I know that's jumping back a little bit in this conversation, but you have to stand in your own power. You have to find your voice and stand in your own power and stand up to your boss and say, this isn't okay with me, or this isn't in my work agreement, or this isn't what we agreed to do, or I feel really taken advantage of here. You have to say those words. So it's kind of not under the forgiveness thing, but it kind of is under the forgiveness thing, because you have to do those things. And if you're not doing those things, then you've got to take on some of the responsibility of what's happening. And then when those things happen and it causes the end of your job, you also have to forgive yourself for not having the skills or having the courage to stand in your own power. But then moving forward, you have to learn how to stand in your own power. And I'm kind of jumping ahead into mine and Becky's next little thing, but we're going to start talking now about moving forward. So Becky, do you want to talk about that since I already started it?
Well, we're going to close it up because we're going to repeat some things, but that just leads perfectly into this is a mantra we have said over and over and over: communication, communication, communication. It happens at the very beginning, and you have to keep it up. You can't become complacent and say, oh, well, everything's great. I don't need to tell them anything. And the other one that goes with that makes my crazy is fear. Like, I'm afraid to talk to them. What? That means you haven't been communicating about little things on a daily or weekly basis with them. You haven't kept up with just a good, touching base, because now it's built up into something and you're fearful. If you've been communicating, then that fear isn't there because, oh, I've talked about those things and this thing, and now I have something big and I need to discuss with them, and I can do that too.
Mm-hmm.
So even if right now you look at your job and you're going, gee, I'm really poor in the communication, then you start today. You start today being a better communicator so that you can say, hey, that, what that happened hurt my feelings, or, I don't think you understand where I'm coming from, and communicate that with them.
Mm-hmm.
That one's a huge one for me. What's a huge one for you?
That's right. It's big. It's major. No. And forgive yourself. That's the other big one. When you to move forward, in order to move forward, you have to forgive yourself first.
Yeah.
Own your part and forgive yourself. And then start to move towards forgiving others. You're not perfect. They're not perfect. But you have to come to some resolution of the situation. And don't drag it with you. Don't drag it behind you.
I know we talk about, forgiveness being, if you have unforgiven, this whole feeling of being, I didn't get what I wanted out of it, they hurt me. That becomes this toxic thing. And honestly, it is like toxin.
Mm-hmm.
People will say, oh, I'm super tired all the time. Oh, I just don't have the energy I used to have. Oh, I don't feel well. Yeah, you're holding in a lot of ugly feelings and you're shoving it down and pretending it's not happening. You got to go look at it. You got to go look at it so you can get rid of it. You release it, and you honestly will physically and mentally feel better for doing it. And sometimes that means you just need to remove some people from your lives, people who are causing more toxic feelings.
Mm-hmm.
That's tricky too.
Yeah, but you do, and it's okay. That's the other thing. That's the other part about it, is that it is okay to remove toxic people from your lives. Mm-hmm. Even if they're people in your family, even if it's your best friend from grade school, it's okay to remove toxic people from your life. Because when you continue to carry around these toxins and you continue to carry around all this hurt and all this anger and all this unforgiveness, I'm going to show you what happens. You just carry it around with you, and it becomes part of you. Take it everywhere you go. And you know where else you take it? You take it to a job interview. On your job interview, there's all that anger, all that forgiveness, all that they didn't treat me right, they didn't pay me right, they let me go, they said they were going to keep me forever. That wasn't right what they, blah, 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 blah. And you just carry it with you. And what happens when you carry it with you is that this is the first thing. Number one, this is the first thing that you see. So what it is what people see is not your best self. When you go into a job interview, you want to project your best self. And people don't see that. Really, they see all the anger and all the frustration and all the unforgiveness that you're carrying around with you. But if you put it behind you, then you can see this is you. This is the real you. This is who you are. And this is who you want people to see. You have to let it go. You have to quit carrying this with you. You have to. If you want to project your best self and you want to move forward with your life, you have to quit carrying the hard stuff. Because love always, what's it do, Becky?
Looks forward.
Right. Hate, anger, unforgiveness always looks back. And it's heavy. It's a heavy load to carry. So you have to let it go.
Let it go.
That's right.
And now we'll go into our singing.
No,
we won't. We won't.
We won't. We will
it
not.
was in my head when you just said that.
Jump into a rendition of Frozen. Sorry, girls. Sorry, people. All right. So, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's where we stop. And we want to encourage you to, get in touch with us. If you have questions, if you want to chat, if you want to talk, if you have good ideas, you can reach us. I know that on the Nanny Transitions page and on the group page, we do a lot of going over this again and again. But it's important, and it's important to reach out for help too if you need it.
And we are here, and we are willing to talk to you. Becky and I both make time for nannies in transition and nannies who are struggling. And a huge, huge part of transition is forgiveness. It's huge. It is enormous. And you have to do it before you can move forward. So, if you need somebody to talk to, if you need somebody to set you on the right path, whatever you need, we're here.
Yep.
Okay. You can email us, call, message me. I'm not going to give you permission to message Becky, but if Becky wants to do that, she can. But you can always message me through Nanny Transitions, through the Rebuilding Team. Yeah, on Facebook. You know us. You know where we are. You can find us. We're easy to track.
We respond.
And we will, yes. And we will make time for you. We will make time for you. Because the F word is one of the most important things that you have to learn how to do as a nanny. You have to learn to forgive. And it's not easy, but it can be done. And it is life-changing when you learn how to do it.
Absolutely.
So, okay. Thank you for joining us.
See you next time.
Okay.